In my opinion, the BRICS could play three key roles to alleviate the food crisis. One, as a negotiator, two, as a financier, and third, as a catalyst. As we know, the BRICS, they must continue to negotiate amongst themselves and also at the World Trade Organization a solution to the agricultural subsidies that are distorting terms of trade and also halting agricultural production in the developing world. Second, the BRICS could finance the upgrading of agricultural infrastructure like irrigation and transportation, storage, distribution systems to secure and also to enhance the complementarity of food and agricultural global value chains, but also intra-BRICS trade and BRICS trade with third countries. And here I believe that the BRICS-led New Development Bank could play a very, very fundamental role. And last, the BRICS could catalyze a technological innovation to increase agricultural productivity. There has been talks on the creation of a BRICS environmentally sound technology cooperation platform for innovation, as brought up in 2019 when Brazil held the presidency of the BRICS. Also, the creation of a BRICS technology transfer center, as proposed by India. And all of these proposals, they should and could be revived. But beyond the initiatives within the BRICS, also the five countries, in my opinion, could explore ways to more meaningfully engage with the United Nations on mechanisms like the technology facilitation and the technology bank. So, in my opinion, the BRICS, they could play an even greater role in global geopolitics, and not only through traditional security, but mainly through economic and financial cooperation. And this is very clear in the case of Ukraine, when we see the grouping positioning itself, not only in relation to the conflict, but also the challenges that are emanating from or that are being aggravated by the conflict. As we know, the BRICS, they have repeatedly affirmed the respect for sovereignty, equality, for territorial integrity, for international law. And following these principles, the five countries, they support talks between Russia and Ukraine and also efforts at the UN to provide humanitarian aid. And it's therefore not about making new military alliances or challenging NATO, but about building a road of lasting peace and universal security. Now, regarding the challenges that originate in the Ukraine war or that are being aggravated by the conflict, the BRICS, in my opinion, could play a greater geopolitical role by offering solutions to issues like food security, as we discussed before, also the disruption of global value chains, inflation, and economic volatility. For example, the proposal for the creation of a BRICS payment system that has been discussed for several years now, and payments in national currencies is now being revisited and could potentially reduce exposure of these five countries to exchange rate volatility and foster intra-BRICS trade. And in my opinion, this would be a 5 times win-win. The different geopolitical interests between the BRICS countries affect the trust they have one for another. And while they affect the trust they have one for another, they also affect their capacity to build consensus as a group. And the result of this is that pulling power in these multilateral arrangements is becoming so costly that the five countries in certain occasions may prefer to engage one with another directly in bilateral arrangements. And I call this bilateralization of the intra-BRICS relations. It's beneficial in a way as it gives more flexibility to each country to pursue their geopolitical interests whenever they coincide one with another. And a clear example is how India is participating in both BRICS and the Quad. But while it gives flexibility, it also makes more challenging for these countries to agree on a common identity and common goals. And sheer evidence of this was during the pandemic when Russia was the first country to register a COVID vaccine. China announced its intention to make its vaccine a global public good. India, as a global pharma powerhouse, as we know. So the political will and the capacity within the BRICS were there. But the grouping did not offer a robust response. It was actually limited to revisiting old proposals like the establishment of the BRICS Vaccine Research and Development Center that are certainly much welcome. But sadly, it took 5 years for the 5 countries to launch the initiative in a virtual format.